Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay Kate Brown and I am the founder of United in Opera, an organization dedicated to providing access to resources, information, and mentorship for aspiring opera singers. I'm going to be joined today by Lisette Oropesa, who I actually met, oh gosh, that was a year ago today. I met her at the finals of the Metropolitan National Opera Council auditions, and I'm so excited to have her on. She is a wonderful human being, and I am inspired by her each and every time I listen to her sing. She is not only a beautiful artist, but is a beautiful human, and I look forward to seeing her, and it looks like she is joining, so I'm gonna come say hey. All right. But I'm excited to see her. Hi!
Hello!
How are you? How are you doing?
I'm awesome. Let me just turn up my volume, get
Okay.
myself all situated. We got this little fancy apparatus that puts a phone on this side and a light on this one.
Wait,
So
really?
I'm feeling it.
You're like ready? I'm sitting in front of this giant window and I'm like, I love natural light. We'll take
Oh, it's
this.
the best. It's the best. It really is the most beautiful light. I wish I had some, but it's evening already here, so we ran out of natural light.
What time is it? Where are you? Let's just talk about that first. So you're in quarantine. We talked about this a little bit, but tell the world what you're doing.
I'm in Germany, in Dresden, and I'm recording tomorrow. We start hopefully rehearsing to record this week.
Okay.
So I'm in
perfect.
Germany, which is why I have no light because it's
Okay.
kind of now. Yes.
Okay, so you're obviously singing the role d'Alfredo. That's the obvious choice for
Yes,
you.
we decided to like make a twist on the story.
Just a Fox switch.
I was like, I want to throw money at somebody. Can I just throw money at somebody?
Just like
Alfredo.
Oh gosh, well that's so exciting. How is it like dealing with COVID? And we talked about quarantine and stuff we've been talking about the past couple of days. Like, how has that been for you just as a singer dealing with all of the stuff that's been going on?
Well, Lindsay, to be honest, it's been a big disaster mess. I can't say that it's like, oh, it's totally great. It's a big pain in the ass. I'm sorry. Because everywhere you go,
it's fine.
the reason being, everywhere you go has different regulations and everything changes every 2 weeks.
Right.
So if you can imagine your life where, previously when I don't know, even if you go to book like a weekend somewhere, usually you book those things like in advance.
Yep.
Imagine all of that being pushed to the last possible conceivable moment. And then still being threatened that it's canceled, and then you lose all the investment that you made of money, of time,
right,
of planning. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times when things fall through, it's not just, it's frustration on top of financial woes, on top of the fear and the anxiety that's already a part of it. So it's just not, it's not been easy, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, and you were telling me that you were in quarantine for a little while, came to Dresden, and then you were quarantining again. And like, you can't even leave your room. Yeah. So it's so interesting that we as singers and we as artists are so connected to humans, and we thrive off of the ability to connect with other people. And it's just like, you can't leave your room. What do you do?
Even as non-artists, I think, as human beings, like we just really, in fact, actually this morning I woke up to read all these articles that all these protests were happening in Germany yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Which, they've been protesting everywhere against the quarantine measures. And usually it's like far right-wing groups and anti-vaxxers and people who are COVID deniers. And I'm like, will you stop gathering because you're pushing your numbers up?
Like, we would like this to be over. Please just go home and be done with this. We are over this.
I know.
And like,
we're so close. America's close.
We are very close. I shared with you that I got my first dose of the vaccine 2 weeks ago. Thank you. I literally wept because I was just so relieved that this is like for myself, for my journey. Obviously, we'll still be maintaining protocols and doing all that stuff, but I wept because my journey towards like normalcy is getting closer. But at the same time, I wept for just how far into this rabbit hole opera has had to go into because of COVID and the pandemic. And Some opera houses are definitely taking it better than others and are able to do things in a way that other opera companies can't. It's very like specific. And I was going to ask how, like, have you been doing, I know you've been doing your master classes and things like that. Have you been doing any type of digital productions? And like, how has that pandemic been working in terms of like digital, like music for you?
Well, it's been different things. Every situation I've been in has been different. So for like
Mm-hmm.
some stuff, it's like we do it like in London, I did a live concert. We rehearsed, but it was filmed live and
Yeah.
broadcast live of just arias. And everybody
Sure.
was tested and the whole house was empty. And
Okay.
then I've done the whole pre-recorded thing where it's pre-recorded and then they patch it together and they post it later. I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
I've done filming, like MGM, style
Yeah.
situation,
Mm-hmm.
like honest to God, like, okay, 10 seconds. Okay, now we're going to move these cameras. Now we're going to do it again. That. And I've
We
done,
did
of
that
course,
for HGO. We did
mhm.
Hansel and Gretel with a green screen, and obviously you know Hansel and Gretel very well. But we did Hansel and Gretel with full green screen, and it was like, okay, we're gonna shoot this 30 seconds, and then we're gonna move the entire set, and then shoot it again. And it was wild.
It's very interesting. It's hard though, isn't it? Because you're
Hmm.
just like exhausted, and the pacing that you normally have as a singer on a theatrical in a
Yeah.
theatrical production is not the same.
It's hard to maintain character when it's that
Yeah,
type of thing because you're just like,
very
okay, I'm
hard.
gonna do this same 30 seconds 6 times,
Yeah.
and and then you jump to another part of the opera.
I know. And you like try to do the same thing. And you're like, they're
It's
like, remember what you
wild.
did because we need you to do the exact same thing. You're like, I don't remember what exactly I did
Yeah.
at this one exact moment. Like, because I
Hmm.
sometimes you're doing stuff to compensate for like maybe an angle that you think is probably needs to change because
Absolutely.
the partner, or maybe you're giving a different face because you're like trying to, whatever. And the dress is
Absolutely.
never the same. Like it doesn't sit the same. It's just like, ugh, I know. It's
But
hard.
I do think people will realize that, that despite everything that's going on, we are continuing to strive to make beautiful art and to bring
Mhm.
art to people. So even, you know what, even if the broom that I moved in Act 1 is slightly over when it comes back on screen, like, I'm sorry.
I don't know that continuity. People. I think when people watch a film, people
There's like a blog.
right. No, but I mean, like the continuity. They're very aware of it
Oh,
because you notice
absolutely.
it more in a film. In theater, you kind of follow because in theater you can move your eyes wherever you want. But in a
Yeah.
film, the director makes you look at what the director wants you to look at. So you can't watch
Hmm.
the character you want to watch the whole
No,
time if you felt like it. If you wanted to watch a theatrical production of Hansel and Gretel and only ever watch Hansel, you can. But
no,
if you're watching a movie, the director's like, we're going to watch The Witch. Now we're going to watch the children. Now we're going to watch Hansel and Gretel. You know what
absolutely.
I'm saying? So you can't, the
Absolutely.
continuity is very like strong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, well, I have questions from a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of things. There is a question in the chat. Let's see what this one says first.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is so fun.
So this is a quick question. Uh, Hello, Lisette. How are you doing? Are you planning to do a CD of opera arias in the future? Tell me. Tell me your
Yes.
tea.
Yes. So the tea is last year during lockdown, also in Germany, we recorded an aria album of Mozart concert arias that
Okay.
is going to be released hopefully in May. It's done. I mean, we completed the whole project,
Hmm.
and then we're recording this album this week of Traviata. And if
Okay.
all goes well, because I mean, they're kind of continuing lockdowns in Germany, and I don't know what that's
Hmm.
going to mean for us, but we're supposed to record also next month,
Okay.
hopefully, another album of bel canto arias, French bel canto arias. And I haven't announced it formally because I don't know if it's going to happen, and I don't want
Right.
to get people excited. But I've been working on this repertoire. In fact, tonight I have a French coaching tonight
Ooh.
to make
Okay.
sure my French is on point for this
Okay.
album.
Au point, as you would
Yeah.
say. I mean, so I was obviously like doing some like deep like Spotify stalking and things like that of you, and because I started putting together this playlist of women in opera. So whether they're singers or composers or conductors that, you know, are inspiring, and we're adding to it each week. And I used you as one of my people for the first week, and I found the album, of course, I found the album of you and Vlad Ivtinka, who is a coach of mine, and I screamed. I was like, wait.
Isn't he wonderful?
I was like, we love him. Oh, he coached me for a year during my master's, and like I still speak to him, and I speak to his partner, and yeah, they're wonderful people. But okay, so I have some things. So a random question, but related to COVID and all of these travel things. What, number one, what do you think people will be able to do, and what do you think opera will look like moving forward post-COVID? Do you think we'll stick with wherever you want? Well, it's very different, right? I think the American structure is going to be very different from the European structure.
Yeah, because America has more diversity in general to count on than Europe seems to. I mean, if you think about the idea that all the opera houses in Italy tend to cast a lot of Italians, and all the opera houses in France tend to cast a lot of French singers, and so there's not a lot. There isn't quite the same centralized diversity in Europe as there is in America.
Absolutely.
You know, because in America, if you think of the whole country as a melting pot of different cultures and
absolutely,
and everything, people from all over the world that go there to train.
Absolutely.
And then have opportunities to sing, which I think is great. So I would like to see, I'll tell you what I want to see.
Please tell me.
More diversity in casting. I really do. I feel like that is the one most, the thing is though, to get to that point to where you see diversity in casting on stage, you have to see it from further back. You have to go back 10 years, maybe even to the youngest ages of people who are first being exposed to music. And the reason I say this is because my mom is a music teacher in the elementary school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Oh, the wee babes.
Yeah, the wee babes. The first time, but the thing is, that's when people get their first exposure to classical music. If they're lucky, if they don't already have it at home, they'll get it hopefully at that age. And that's when they can start being fascinated by an orchestra or fascinated by singing together. And so I feel like we kind of have to, like whenever opera companies do outreach, they focus a lot on high schoolers. They focus sometimes on local universities, maybe even arts colleges, but it'd be great to go even further back. Yeah. But the thing is, I know that young kids may not have the attention span nowadays to kind of go to an opera, but there are lots of operas that they could very well see and enjoy.
Absolutely.
And it's just the kind of thing that education-wise needs to just start sooner, because then what ends up happening is that kids with more privilege tend to get more training, classical training, because classical training is not cheap or free or everywhere. It is very difficult to get. And if you have to pay to audition for something, if you have to pay to get into a program, imagine how many more times a person who is more wealthy, more privileged will get to audition for stuff and fail.
Simply because they can pay for it.
Yes, because they can get 10 auditions in a year, and maybe they'll get one that they land. Whereas a person with a slightly less privilege in their life, who tends to come from a less privileged socioeconomic background, isn't going to have as many opportunities and as much financial means to audition for 10 programs. They might audition for one.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
So it's a big socioeconomic issue. But I wish there was a way because I feel like that leads to diversity in casting.
Absolutely. Well, you and I have spoken a little bit about like the mission of United in Opera, and my goal and vision is this, because like I came from literally the middle of nowhere in New York and went to 2 state schools, and then auditioned for Rice on a whim. Was like, oh, I hear this school's good. And like, oh, I hear Dr. King is like a good teacher. I had no idea like the level of the program or anything. And I applied, and the next day I got a call and was like, hey, we believe in you. Do you want to come work with us? And it's wild. Well, because I don't believe that the path of an opera singer has to be important undergrad, important grad, like young artist program, bigger young artist program, manager, success. I don't believe that's true. And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, it's so often completely a different, everybody has a a windy path. So few people go like step by step, because some people's voices maybe need more time to develop. Some people's voices change and they shift. Some people change voice type. Some people go through a bad teacher that gets them going in a wrong path and they have to change that. I mean, you could be doing everything right, or so you think on paper, doing everything right, and still never land anything. I mean, that happens too.
Well, and I think that's why we need this. We need people that are going to be there to say, hey, you're doing it. Like, you're worthy, and let me help you get to the next level. Because I think that's why part of the reason we are missing diversity in opera, or we're trying, but I think that's the reason it's been so long coming, is because we need to be able to foster the people who aren't given classical music lessons, like aren't given voice lessons at the age of 13 on, to help get into Juilliard at 18. Which, if you go to Juilliard at 18 for your undergrad, obviously that's fine. Like, go there, study, learn, grow, but that's not the only path.
Right.
So I'm glad that you brought up the diversity. So sorry, continue your points.
Oh no, that was the main thing. I mean, I feel like after COVID, a lot of things that will stick around, and they were already kind of doing this before, which was broadcasting and having things available on the internet, which I think is one of, actually, if we use it right, it's a great tool that helps aid in what leads to diversity in casting later.
Absolutely.
Because if you make things free to access, you're just going to have a bigger audience. You're going to have a bigger pool. You're going to have people who would otherwise never get to see an opera because they don't live in New York, and they don't live in Philly, and they don't live in LA. They're going to have a chance to see a piece, see an opera performance. So I do think internet broadcasting is still valid and vital to the survival of this art form, especially post-COVID. But I also don't think, for the sake of the art form, that that's what the art form should morph into. Because if it morphs into, we're going to just make operas into movies, we screw ourselves so royally.
We need to have a balance of both. I love this question. How do you think we should try to get more diverse repertoire in opera and classical singing? Love you're talking about casting diverse voices. I'll let you speak on that. And I'll add.
The thing is, when people train for classical voice, when you go to a school and you train for classical voice, you're going to get a certain curriculum of repertoire that you learn to sing as a classical singer. And a lot of it is going to be music that was composed more than 100 years ago. Most of it will be that. And I don't think that we should not teach that music. I don't think we should not sing that music. That is how you learn to sing.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely valid music. It's great for you to learn. I mean, it's the canon of the repertoire. And I don't want the canon to be exploded. I want the canon to because, I mean, if you think, there's so much repertoire that you could never run out. Like, what aggravates me is actually we'd only do a few of the chestnuts of things all the time. And it's just like, why do we focus on the chestnut? Well, they're what sell. I'm like, well, haven't you tried any of the other?
Right.
You tried anything else? And I think looking for, and I'm really not an expert, to be honest, because I haven't sung anything contemporary in my entire career.
Sure.
Part of that is my own fault, but part of that is, and because mainly there are roles I want to sing. I have dream roles, and I focus on those. And if I have contracts to do those, that's what I want to do. But also part of that is because it's just a lot of it doesn't get done very much, and it's hard to learn sometimes contemporary music. So I think now we're having a bit of an opportunity that everybody's kind of not performing. Everybody's back to like research, back to like learning, back to looking things up and listening to expose composers and pieces that have never had a chance to see the light of day. And now it's a time to do that and to connect with modern composers, modern singers, modern people who know more of the repertoire, and get them put stuff out, output.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret. So like this month is Women's History Month, and we're talking to some fabulous women throughout the industry. And next month we're actually going to start Contemporary Music Month, and I'll be speaking to a whole bunch of like new up and coming composers. I'll be speaking to some established composers and trying to get some female representation in there as well, just because I think that is the future of opera. Is people want to go see shows that are representative of the stories that they have in their own lives. And so, we can break down Bohème, I guess, and say, I mean, I don't sing Bohème. No, Puccini didn't like a mezzo, which is fine. I'm not bitter. I'm not mad about it at all. But, like, you can break it down, and there are some very deep-seated emotional things that anybody can, connect to. But what about there's just so many things. Like, I think about, like, As One, I think about Three Decembers, I think about Dead Man Walking, I think about all of these different shows, Little Prince, which is more fantastical, but there's so many things that are being done now that could be utilized, and it would show people the different representation on stage and things that are related to them.
Mm-hmm.
But so we could talk about that literally all day.
All day. I know. I think it's just important for people to feel like there isn't I don't want people to feel like they have to be boxed into contemporary repertoire just in order for that to be the diversity token.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to see Bohème with people of all nationalities and colors singing it. That's the other thing. Right. Like, there's no reason why we can't do Bohème with a diverse cast.
Absolutely.
People are like, then let's just throw away old music and just bring in all the contemporary music and, stuff that's hasn't even been written yet. And that's going to attract audiences. And I'm like, it does if it has something audiences can relate to musically. I don't think necessarily, here's the other issue. Maybe this is a very unpopular opinion. I don't feel like some contemporary music is simply, some of it's just not beautiful and audiences don't respond.
There was, I was literally just talking about this with Jake Heggie a couple weeks ago. I had a meeting, doing some stuff of his, and I literally said to him, I was like, I feel like there's two camps in contemporary music. There's the camp of, I'm going to create tunes and create something that you can walk away singing. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other camp of people who are making it technically more challenging in order to utilize something stylistic, in order to use something from a harmonic or compositional standpoint. And it's like them trying to teach you something.
Right.
But I'm not going to walk out of there humming the tune because my brain was melted.
Right. And the thing is that I don't think as human beings we're ever going to program people to mainstream to respond to that. And the reason is you just don't hear enough of that in music that most people are accustomed to hearing. When you turn on a movie or a film or a TV show, you hear music and 9 times out of 10 it's tonal.
Absolutely.
If we take away, rip away from tonality and things that sound beautiful and pleasing to the ear, we're going to turn off so many people for no reason. That's like, there's enough gorgeous repertoire, enough composers who can compose a melody that's moving and beautiful, and then a great story that it can be done. You know what I mean? So I just, I'm in the camp of hummable, at least somewhat beautiful music. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, and I'm not to say that, something that's extremely compositionally complex and like that isn't hummable and tunable. I'm not to say that there isn't a place for that in opera, but that's not the first thing I'm going to take my mom to see.
Thank you.
Because she's going to be very confused.
Yes. I think art. When you go to a museum and you see museums, they're always like separated by like era. Like you have your Renaissance art here, and you have this type of art here, and you have Impressionism, and they don't take away all the old art just to make room for modern art, unless you're going to see just modern art, and then it's just modern art, and that's fine. But you know what I mean? It's just like that's the same thing with our art form. Like we shouldn't take away the classics or whatever just in order to create a platform for contemporary art just for the sake of contemporary art. At least because as a singer, how much of that stuff is singable even? Sometimes it's like you can't really, you don't learn to sing that way. You learn to sing with classical repertoire 99 times out of 100. That's how you learn to use your instrument. It's repertoire that is like instructional. Yeah. Well,
I find it harder to appreciate new music if you don't know what's come before it.
That's very true.
How can you appreciate, a master work of something that has been, the type of music that we have as contemporary music has been evolved for several hundreds of years. So it's like you have to know where you've come from to know what you're going to get.
To know where it's going. No, I agree.
Yeah. So we could talk about this for all day.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so the first ever thing I ever heard about you, Lisette, was about how you speak literally like 20 million languages,
No.
not literally, but, and how like you do all of your interviews in like the language that, the language that the interviewer is
I
in.
tried. I tried.
So how did this happen? How, how are you a
Oh,
genius? And how have all the languages happened? Tell me.
allora, well,
Allora.
the thing is, I'm Hispanic, so I speak
Mhm.
Spanish. I spoke Spanish at home growing up, but I never
Okay.
like formally studied it. I just speak that way. I just speak at home, so it's not really a language I had to like study. I got lucky in
Sure.
that, and then I grew up speaking English, and then I took French class in Louisiana because in Louisiana they teach French because it's
Right.
a Neapolitan. Oh my God.
No, you're fine.
Napoleonic. It's the Napoleonic,
Ah,
one of the later Napoleonic conquests. So we still
sure.
have the Napoleonic Code, and so they teach French.
Okay.
Whatever. But so I had that. That was an advantage, and I actually really liked French growing up as a child, and because I had
Mhm.
exposure to it again, exposure at an early age makes for better mastery when you're older because your
Mhm.
brain soaks it up. So I actually picked it up wonderfully and I really
Okay.
liked it, and so I went to college already being very comfortable with 3 languages. And then I
Mhm.
started taking Italian class because I had to, obviously, for our job, for our major. It's one of the things we
Yep.
have to do. And I picked up pretty easily because it's very similar to Spanish, so I wasn't.
Yes.
If you're not afraid of language, which is something that comes from, again, exposure at an early age. If you're exposed to
Mhm.
something at an early age, when you come at it again as an adult, you're not like, whoa, what is this? This is totally
Right.
foreign. It doesn't feel foreign to speak another language. I don't feel like strange or like embarrassed because I've always spoken more than one language. So might as
Absolutely.
well learn
What's the
another.
difference?
Yeah. So then German is I would say my weakest one, simply because it's just my weakest one. It's the one I have the least amount of comfort in, but I do read it and enjoy it and try to
Mhm.
speak it. And I've studied it and I love it. I think it's a beautiful language. I love singing in German. And that's it. That's the reason.
I always, okay, so at HGO, we do language lessons one-on-one and conversational. And I have learned in my time at HGO Italian, German, and now we're on French. But I
Bravo.
still do, thank you. I still do Italian and German every week. And I feel so bad for my French teacher because I walk in, like I sit in my Zoom call, and he's like, okay. And he'll like just be like, ça va? And I'm like, ça va, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
there you go.
know. And like, or my brain will start to like think of how to say something in a different language. So I'll start to think of like, oh
Yes.
yeah. And I'll be like, start to say Italian. And he's like,
Yes, I feel that. I feel that. Actually, the confusion is real.
Mhm.
It's a
I
real
was
thing.
gonna say, do you get mixed up?
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, all the time. It's funny because when I come home after I've been in Europe for a while, or I've been in Italy in particular, I'll come
Hmm.
home and say something to my grandparents and say the Italian word, the
And
Italian
they're
phrase.
like,
They're like, I think you've been speaking Italian, too long. And then when I say stuff in Italian, if I'm not sure of the word, I kind of vamp on the Spanish word, and 9 times
yeah,
out of 10, they can
it's like
interpret what I'm
close.
saying. Yeah, it's close enough. Or it's like,
Oh,
because as a person, when you understand how romantic languages work, they're all kind of similar. And so it
mhm.
helps you, like it's a doorway into
Absolutely.
the other Romance languages. So it'll
I
be that way for you for French. If you feel comfortable in Italian, eventually French, you'll get it.
will
Like
be
you'll.
there. Okay. I always just feel bad. I'm just like, I'm so sorry, no.
Oh,
It's
don't
like,
apologize. You have
it's
to.
like, je suis désolée.
I know.
But no, I mean, it's an important part of our training that started very late for me. So I'm just happy to be able to be working on it now at all. So,
Yeah.
okay, so we talked about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about like, so you went to LSU for your undergrad or your master's?
My undergrad.
Okay. And then that competition was somewhere in there.
Yes, at the end.
Okay.
Like
And
last
then how did you, what was the like, what was the journey, the bridge from like young artist land to like now being literally like one of the most famous sopranos I've ever seen in my whole life?
Oh my God.
So that's cool.
It's a long journey from young artist land to feeling moderately like to where you're like busy all the time. In the sense that being a young artist, you're like a student all the time. I still feel like a student and a young artist in my heart. I'm never gonna not be that. I'm like as I was saying, coaching, like you don't ever get rid of that. There are some there might be some singers that don't do that, but most of the ones that I know that are really successful that I respect are students forever. So I mean, you get out of the young artist program, and then some people, everybody's path is different. So like for some people, it's immediately into management and starting to sing like small roles, medium roles, in some cases really large roles. And that's basically what I did. I had a young manager who was kind of just starting out, was my first manager. We had a beautiful relationship, and we worked together for a couple of years. Not even, it's like a year and a half actually, before basically the corporation that he worked for started downsizing. It was already starting. And that was in like 2007, 8, 9, on there.
Sure.
And it started getting, the corporation started getting smaller. So I had to move to another manager immediately, very early on in my career, which was frustrating. And then I was with that manager for a while, and it worked well. And I was singing medium to larger roles in smaller houses, and then smaller roles in some bigger houses.
Sure.
Very basic, average early career. I wasn't too busy. I wasn't making a lot of money. It was just do the best you can and just take every gig. Everything was a debut. Take every gig and do your best. And if they like you, they'll hire you back. And that's actually the most important level, I think, for every singer to find themselves on that path. I mean, because that's the time when you're really making your impressions on everybody. After a while, you can start to rest on your laurels and your reputation, but that's when you're building everything.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And people will come to listen to you, and you never know who's in the audience is coming to listen to you. And you might have your first chance to like get good critiques, important critiques of your work. And so those are the building block years. I feel like those are the years where if you do everything I don't want to say if you do everything right, because nobody does everything right, but the less mistakes you make, the better, because that's when you start being really visible. You can make your mistakes when you're a young artist. You can make your mistakes when you're in college, but as you start becoming a professional, those first few things that you have,
less and less.
Yes.
What's interesting is I am interested because I'm now leaving the studio, so I'll be out kind of in that weird, funky, middle-y thing. I'm interested to see how people who are leaving grad school, people who are leaving young artist programs, people who are in transition points are going to handle the pandemic, like handle the aftermath.
Screwed, they're probably
it's wild.
So royally screwed right now because this is they've lost 2 important years.
It's wild to think about, like, because I know that some companies will be trying to like backtrack and like do the shows that they've missed, and so they're trying to like fulfill things there, and then like so they've already got their people, and so I have been like talking about this with my people at HGO, and it's gonna be a little bit of a waiting game for the next year, possibly 2, just trying to get everything sorted out, which is and I think the best thing that anybody in that situation can do is to make the best of that time, whether you're on stage or not, whether that's you taking more voice lessons, getting a muggle job, as it's called. And
I know some people that have done that. I know a lot of people have had to like have some other work for a while because there's nothing else that there's only so many months you can rely on your savings account, if you even have a savings account. Most people were in debt at that level, just at this point. So no, I don't. I definitely. That's why I've been trying to do everything I can to help younger singers with my master classes and stuff. It was at least giving them an opportunity to get
perform,
semblance of information, community, singing together, maybe even instruction in some cases, or at least inspiration to keep doing something those first few months, because that was really scary and still is. But I feel like now we're getting some hope that things are coming back and that there'll be more opportunities. And some people have pushed themselves during this period and tried to stay like visible. doing stuff online and being inventive and being creative and like maybe even reinventing themselves in a way. Like I think of singers, and this is by no means a young singer or like a starting out singer, but Karen Slack Blackwell, who basically now is an administrator and advisor, and you know she started she's
literally does everything. She literally does
sorry.
everything now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, if you can keep yourself visible and contributing and inspiring people and still singing, at least you'll find some fulfillment instead of just waiting for everything to just get back to normal, because it might not. At some point you might have to like make your own path, make your own program, make your own. I mean, we've all got the internet in a way to broadcast, you know.
Well, that's the thing, is like that is something that obviously didn't exist, you know, 20 years ago, something like that, like not too super long ago. Like you couldn't just post a YouTube video of you singing to a piano track. Like you couldn't do that. And like,
I know.
And so
hello, now I'm happy about that. That's actually one of the best things that's happened. Because now it's like, hey, I have a platform. I want to do a concert. Why not?
I don't need.
So does everybody else.
Yeah, I don't need to pay, you know, $150 to book a space and like to do all these things. Like I need to pay a collaborative pianist to make some recordings for me, and I'm gonna put on a show on Facebook Live.
Yes, you can.
And why not? Go for it.
Yes, you can. You can even ask people to buy tickets to it.
Yeah, I
yes,
think.
You can.
And why not? That's the thing. Like, if I've taken anything out of this time, it's that there is so much opportunity for growth, always, whether that is linguistically or technically or dramatically or, you know, humanly, like just working on yourself. You know, there were definitely some moments where it was hard for everybody, and that's totally valid, 100%. But I learned that growth during this time period has really saved me, like mentally as well. But so we talked about that. I've had a lot of people ask me about pressure and how you handle like high pressure situations, because you're like singing at all the top houses, like singing like lead roles, and like bel canto's hard.
Well, like, I mean, pressure, it does actually, that's one of the things when we were talking about earlier, how those first few years that you're just building your first like important steps in your career, then later what ends up happening is that the pressure just gets higher. The bar always gets higher because people expect a lot from a person who's maybe more well-known, or a person who's maybe a name, whatever you want to call it, or even a person who's simply making a debut in a big house. Even if you've never been at that big house before, the idea that you're debuting at this opera house, people want to hear a legend in the making. They want to hear like a star moment, and people expect a lot. And so there's a lot of pressure, yes. The main combat in my personal life to pressure is preparation. Preparation.
100%.
Know that I have something experience to rely on. That's when I feel like, you know what, I will do my best with the experience that I have. Even if it's not the role. So like, let's say you're singing for the first time a new Mozart role that you've never sung before. You're like, oh God, you know, Mozart's hard, Mozart's scary, there's a lot of recit and blah, blah. But if you rely on all those hours of coaching you did on the recit, if you rely on the fact that you had your Italian class and you know what you're saying, and you know what your other characters are saying, and you rely on the fact that you have sung Mozart, maybe since you were in college, you were like, Mozart, I have Mozart, he's here. So I'm going to sing and he's going to be there, and it's going to, you know what I'm saying? Like if you rely on that experience, it really helps you combat the fear that pressure can create.
Absolutely. I think the more comfortable you are with what you're singing and how you're singing and what you're like, knowing what you're saying, the easier it is on you from a mental standpoint. Because you're like, the role may be long and the role may be hard, but if you know what you're singing and know what you're saying and know how to do it, you'll be okay.
That's right.
And I like to take solace or think that, you know, people are forgiving. And, you know, like if you have a moment where you have a memory slip, or you have a moment where your high note, it exists, but it's not the greatest, you know, like it's going to be okay. Like, it's fine. I it'll happen.
Audiences are more forgiving than we are of
Absolutely.
ourselves. Often.
Self-criticism is the worst.
Yeah.
Oh,
But not, I mean, you also do get real legit criticism from other people too. And then we have to also then turn and be compassionate or not take things like that personally. If somebody
yeah.
has criticism about our singing or whatever, some people criticize things that aren't even in our control, like our appearance or maybe our age or maybe our our voice, the color of our voice. Like I get criticized all the time on the color of the sound of my instrument or maybe the size of my instrument, and I'm like, I can't change
Cool, thanks.
that's like blaming somebody for the hair on their arm. It's like I can color it, but I can shave it, but it's gonna come back because I have hair on my arm. It's kind of like, so I try not to take those things personally. I try to just be like, that's a matter of taste, and it's something that I have I'm born with. That's what it sounds like. And if I try to change how my voice sounds by making it anything other than what it naturally is, I'm gonna actually hurt myself. So I'm not gonna do that.
I was gonna ask how you deal with criticism as well. Like, I mean, obviously I think you're amazing, but like there is always, of course, there's always gonna be people who are, on the other side of things. So I was
They're
gonna ask,
entitled to their opinion. There are plenty. The thing is that's why this is why this is an art and not a sport. There is no win and lose. There is no score. There is no time versus distance. It's not gold medals. It's not the Olympics. Like, it is not a sport. It is an art. There are technical facets to singing, yes, but we are still biomechanical beings. We are not machines. We are biomechanical. And because we are creating music, we are not playing against a clock. We're not playing against a distance. We're playing against our bodies and our emotional makeup. And so because of all of that, if you judge singing like a sport, you're judging it in a way that isn't, in my opinion, is not the way to judge it. I mean, it should be, of course, everybody's objective. Everybody's going to say, well, I really like this sound better than I like that sound. Okay.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that the sound is wrong. The only thing that makes it sound wrong is if it's out of tune, or if the vowel is like completely wrong. Or
you're saying the wrong words. Right.
That's where it ends. That's where it ends. And people always get on these things about technique, and I don't like his technique or her technique or whatever. And I'm like, technique is also a choice to an extent. Some singers sing everything one way. Some singers make changes. Some people place their voice more forward. Some people place their voice more back. And it's just like, I mean,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. And people, if you don't like the sound, that's fine. You don't have to listen to that singer.
Honestly, and honestly though, like, why would I want, as an audience member, to listen to people who sound exactly the same or look exactly the same or act exactly the same? Why would I want that?
No, exactly. I feel like the hardest thing that I find now that modern singers, because there's so much music available to listen to, like old recordings and stuff on the internet are like free and everywhere. Everybody gets, especially when you sing traditional repertoire, everybody gets compared to the greatest singers that have ever lived. And I'm like, is it fair to judge people on those standards? And some people say, yes, it is, because that's what opera is supposed to be. And if I want to judge you against Callas, I absolutely should, because basically you should be singing exactly like Callas does.
But I'm not Callas. That's the answer.
Thank you. Thank you. And there will never be another. And may her legend live on. And it disrespects, I actually think it disrespects a singer's legendary status to then pit every single other singer against him or her. So I feel like, can we just allow there to be a larger pool of legends, or whatever? Have your legend, have your diva, and nobody touches it. I get that. I have my divas that nobody can talk about to me also, but I would never think that a tenor, if he doesn't sound like Pavarotti, he's just not a good singer. He just sucks, and he shouldn't even be singing. Why? If you don't sound like Pavarotti, why are you even bothering? It's like, what the hell are you even talking about? Yeah, that's the most ridiculous thing, and we get a lot of that.
And it's sad. It's sad to think that that those people are the quote unquote pinnacle, and there's no room for anybody else. And not that I think it diminishes, like you said, it diminishes their legendary status if you're trying to get everybody else to sound like them.
Right. You shouldn't try
What's
to
the point?
a sound you hear on a record ever. Like people think, oh, I can sound just like Pavarotti if I do this, or I can sound just like Tebaldi if I do that. And I'm like, okay, it's good to learn and imitate things that are appropriate for you. But the thing is that how in the hell would you know when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, whether imitating Leontine Price is appropriate for you?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you could imitate her for like a couple of years and then destroy your voice trying to sound like her desperately, you know? And so that's why I feel like singers, if we do that and we try to recreate the same sounds of the past because they sound cool and they sound good, we are essentially giving ourselves maybe a handicap later because you might not be fulfilling your particular voice's potential, you know?
Well, I think the offshoot of that too is like, not even necessarily in terms of mimicking certain voices, but like rep choices as well. Because like you and I have talked about this, like my end life is like that Verdi, Wagner, like that's what I'm going to do. That's just like what my voice is meant to do. But I wasn't attempting to sing that at, 18 years old. And because my voice wouldn't have been able to handle it, and everybody's different. I'm not saying, like if your teacher's got you singing Wagner at 22, that's everybody do their own thing. I'm not calling out anybody in particular, but I know that with my voice specifically, if I would have taken on some of those demanding things, or even like some of the bel canto roles, like I covered Jamie in La Favorite, that, like, pardon my French, but that shit's hard. Like, if I tried to sing that at 22, I would have, like, it would have, like, we would.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. There are a lot, even Mozart. People think Mozart is great music for young singers, and I completely disagree. I actually feel like Mozart requires a very skilled singer to pull off well, and I feel like sometimes singing too much Mozart at a young age actually can make people tighten and get really develop issues that they otherwise wouldn't develop because they're singing stuff that requires every single skill to be perfect. So
give that kid an art song.
Yes.
Give him some art songs.
Art songs.
Learn about legato.
100%. Learn how to sing in the passaggio. Exactly. Learn how to handle the tessitura. Because then you'll get into singing countess or something, and you'll be like up shit creek. If pardon my French, you'll be up shit creek if you don't know how to cover and get your beautiful dome going. And if you're trying to sing heavy because you feel like, oh, I need to sing like lyric because it's the countess, and then you'll be like, wobbly in like 3 years. Like no. Yeah. But I mean, again, that's something that starts with teachers, with curriculums, with young artist programs, with universities. I mean, and that's another can of worms.
That needs to be like a series of like, I am not in the way of being shady. Like I try really hard not to like be disrespectful and rude, but sometimes I get very frustrated when any old person thinks that they can teach somebody how to sing. And I say that in the nicest way possible because learning to sing in general is really freaking hard, number one. And because you can't see it. Right. You just have to know what's happening without even like being able to like, you're playing a clarinet. You can say, hey, your fingers aren't on the holes all the way. That's why it's airy. Yeah. But we can't do that. So number one, it's hard as a singer trying to learn how to sing. But as a teacher, you have to have such an incredible ear to be able to diagnose what's happening. And just because you can sing doesn't mean you can teach.
No.
So those who can't teach is incorrect. Much love.
Very true. Very true. I think being a teacher, the best teachers tend to be older and have a lot of years of experience. Like not just singing themselves, but hearing other people and being able to help other people, and if you think about all the singers that they might have coached, it's possible that a few fall through the cracks and they just couldn't help them, or maybe even wrecked them or did bad things with them. So if you think about the experience that a teacher has to go through a learning phase too, and you think about God, that teacher might have ruined 3 or 4 voices when they were younger, but then when by the time they got to age 70 and they really know what they're doing, now they're brilliant, but it's like, I know it's hard. It's a scary
It's tricky.
Yeah.
That's a thing I always tell people when, like, I've done a lot of talks on like what to look for when you're going to grad school auditions, and like what to like. I've done a lot of those talks to people in undergrads, and I always say that like, what do you need? Do you need technical experience? Because what teacher you choose is going to be very paramount for you.
That's right.
Do you need a lot of performance experience? Maybe, you know, a school that has 300 voice students and they do, you know, 2 shows a year is not your best choice. You know, you have to really play with balance on things, and that's something I talk about all the time. But teacher, to me, I would choose a school that has a good teacher over anything else.
Yep. Agreed. Me
Like,
too.
yeah, a good
Faculty
teacher and a paycheck. That's all I need.
Yes. Faculty plus scholarship. Absolutely.
Oh, but okay, we'll leave that for now. So I have like 2-ish, 3-ish more questions. Very quickly, what are your favorite roles that you have sung or are currently singing? And what are some roles that you're like looking forward to?
So my favorite roles that I've sung are right up there with, it's all the bel canto stuff. I really love Donizetti in general. I've done a lot of Donizetti roles, and I was actually all day for the past basically since I've been in this quarantine, I have been working on I Puritani because I'm debuting that role very soon, and it's a dream role, Elvira in I Puritani. But listening to, thank you, but listening to Puritani makes me think about Donizetti and how much I love the bel canto composers and the bel canto tradition, just because I mean, every role has its challenges, but just as a singer, for me, that's rewarding to sing. I really love singing in French. It's my favorite language to sing in, so I loved singing Manon. I loved any role in French. That's why my bel canto album is in French. We're going to do Rossini French, because as a singer, I really just get a lot of joy out of that. So I'd say it's a combination of that, French and bel canto. And then, yeah, my dream role right now is Elvira in I Puritani. I'm falling in love with this opera. I think it's a freaking gorgeous masterpiece. I adore it. And I want to sing more Bellini. It's the one composer that I studied a ton as a young artist, and I've never sung a Bellini role in my entire career yet. But I mean, my career is only just starting. There's tons of time.
Yeah, you got time. Well, if I could ever convince you to sing a Norma, I'll come sing Oropesa with you.
Girl, that
I'll be like, okay, so I have a proposition. Let's figure this out. Like, okay.
Who knows?
Why not?
I mean, if they start casting Norma really light, but people have asked me if I would sing Adalgisa, because the version of Norma in which the Adalgisa is actually a soprano, and then more of a fuller lyric or a mezzo even, and that can play. I've never looked at Adalgisa.
Well, we'll switch. I'll be Norma. You can be
Norma. Okay.
Perfect. Could you imagine?
That'd be awesome.
Oh, okay. So, it would be fun. It's so beautiful, and I feel bad when people like harp on bel canto, because I get that like it's bum, 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 bum. Like I get it.
Amazing.
But there's so much more to it. Like, if you've got a true bel canto singer, somebody who knows that technique and that style, it's like nothing else. Man, I get into arguments frequently.
When I listen to Bellini and I'm listening to it and I'm like, I hear Wagner sometimes. I mean, Norma is freaking, people act like it's not an important opera. I'm like, Norma, first of all, has an awesome story. An awesome story compared to some bel canto stories that are like, what the hell is the story? I don't understand the story. Norma's story is great. 2 strong female leads. Strong female leads, not like Maria Stuarda. Strong female leads, more than one, not just one. You know, and it's there's depth to the characters. Just because the music isn't like overtly complex, it's the simplicity that's beautiful. And if you're a good singer, if you are a person, if you hear good singers in the music, you get lost in the glory. I mean, honestly, it's just, I love it. Yeah,
absolutely. So I don't want to keep you forever. I'm going to ask 2 more questions and then I'll let you leave.
Okay.
But so we're talking about, you know, our job as artists and what we can do to help further artists who are, you know, the level below us, or, you know, like, what do you view is your job as, you know, like an international leading soprano in helping the people who are lower, not lower on the totem pole, but like a younger generation.
Yeah. I feel like the most important thing that all singers do, and I say this as a person who it was when I was a young artist and I got to watch many, many, many singers come throughout the Metropolitan Opera. Every singer that was a, a big star that I was in a show with, even if I had a tiny part, I learned from them. And they would set an example. Sometimes it was a good example. Sometimes it was a bad example. But we have to realize that when we're singing in an opera and we're singing the title or a big role, even if you're not a star, it doesn't matter. Whatever. The point is, when you show up to work and you get to meet your colleagues and every single person that's in that show with you, they're going to remember that working with you. You're setting an example as a musician and as a singer, but you're also setting an example as a colleague. Like, how are you behaving? How are you treating other people? Are you treating other people like they're beneath you? Or are you treating other people like you respect them and you support them? Are you listening when they sing, or do you tune out when they sing and not give a shit? Like, do you, do you respect their time by coming prepared and doing what you need to do? Or do you just not give two shits about everybody else except for yourself? So it's like, I feel like a lot of it is, I want to sing well and try to give an example of hard work and dedication and respect for the art form.
Absolutely.
And professionalism, but I also want to try, whenever I'm in a situation, to just remember that my behavior and as Lisette, as a person, is being watched. And people, you know what I'm saying? And I want to set an example too. And so I try to be nice to people. I try not to let my emotions and my shit, if there's other shit going on, I try not to bring it into the rehearsal room. I don't take it out on my colleagues. And I'm not perfect by any means. Nobody is. I try to also be respectful and like compassionate, because sometimes people are just, there's a lot going on, and artists are passionate, emotional people. Sometimes they lash out. Sometimes they get mad. Sometimes they leave rehearsal. Sometimes it just can't be there. I mean, the drama is real. The drama is real, but and I try to be. The other one thing I do want to say, I feel like rehearsal time is sacred.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a sacred. It should be a safe space, and I always try to remember that. Like, whenever we're working together, whenever I'm in a scene with someone, especially if I don't know them, and I'm in a scene with someone, and I see that they're nervous or like not comfortable or whatever, I try to remember when I felt that way, and try to give them the support that I would have liked to have at that time.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's all the stuff I would say.
Well, thank you. Okay, last question is kind of like the opposite. So what would you say, because the whole point of United in Opera for me is to help people gain information, gain knowledge that can help further them on their path to being a singer or a composer or conductor or director, whatever, their path is. Because not everybody has, like we mentioned, not everybody has, the path. Like, people have to create their own paths, or they come from different places, and all that stuff is totally fine. But what would you say, like, if you were to give advice to a young artist, any in general, what would your advice to them be?
I would say to really to have your goals as concrete as you can have them, but to also know that in order to achieve all the things that you want to achieve, it's a long step-by-step daily process, and it's going to be frustrating sometimes, because it's going to feel like it's endless. There are times when you're going to hit a wall and you're not going to know how to get around it, and you might lose faith in everything. Some people don't get accepted to everything right away. Some people don't get the lead. Some people don't get the solo. I mean, that happens, and you won't win every competition that you'll do. Try to understand that this life is a journey. There are not goalposts. It is a journey. You're going to fail a lot. You're going to lose a lot. There are going to be times when, rejection is going to be your best friend. But if you can try to take everything as what did I learn from this? What can I learn from this? Are there changes that are within my control that are appropriate for me that I should make? Or are there things being asked of me repeatedly that I can and should do for the sake of what I want? Or
Yeah.
are people, am I getting random feedback that's all over the place? You know, how can I streamline? It's a lot of it is just you getting to know yourself through the filter of other people's input. That's like, if I
Yes.
sum up this life, it's kind of that. You get to know yourself through the filter of everybody else telling you who you are and what you need to be, you know?
Absolutely.
And you can find yourself in that because you're in there.
Yeah.
You're in there. And you wanna build up that, you know, if you think of yourself as a giant thing of marble and you want to like find the statue that's inside, she's in there or he's in there, you know, and don't lose faith if people are trying to get you to change your hammer and your chisel, you know, you as long as you know in your heart, and I feel like every singer knows deep down, like they really give themselves. They really
absolutely. Well, thank you, Lisette. We have 20 seconds before this thing kicks us off. But thank you so much for meeting with me. And it's good to see you. And I'm so grateful to you and your knowledge and wisdom. And I can't wait to see what the next thing for you is. And I will chat with you soon. If you had a question that we didn't answer, send it to me and I'll figure it out for you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Very sweet of you. Thank you, my dear. Thank you.